Hello everyone, today I will show you how to create your own custom nodes using standard macros. But first, not trying to mislead anyone, I consider these custom nodes really because you can access these macros on most blueprints. Also, they show up on your component list in a separate tab you could specify. First off, let's get into this by clicking into a blueprint. I'm going to click on my side-scroller character. Zoom in here. Okay. I created a node called the BB Dev Hub Print Debug. And I type it up here. This node allows me to access quick phrases I've customized in an enumeration blueprint. Some of the phrases I have are on, off, 1, 2, 3, failed, or success. So I'll plug it in here and I'll show you an example on how I use it. So for example, if I want to check if the player can actually jump, I use my print debug string and it shows up on the top left, success. In the viewport, there are two ways we can access the blueprint that allows us to create our nodes. For the first way, in the content browser on the bottom right, view options, we can click on show engine content. Let's get out of here. And you'll see two folders. We're clicking on the engine folder. So if we type up in the search engine content browser, standard macros, actually it shows up right there. So then we can just click on it and we're in the blueprint. For the easier way, first we can access any blueprint, so our widget blueprint, our actor blueprint, or our character blueprint. I'm going to click on our character one. And now all we need to do is type up an engine created standard macro. So a couple common macros include the flip-flop node, the for loop, or the isValid. I'll type in the flip-flop node. So once we type it up, all we need to do is actually just click on it. And it opens up the standard macros. At the top right, we can actually see all the engine created nodes, except for the My Custom nodes. I created that one. On this folder I created, I can actually show the process and how I made my node. On my node, you can actually see all the branches I used connected to the print strings to create custom phrases. And on the right, we can actually see the description for the node I created, the category, which actually shows up if you click on our character. This is the category, My Custom Nodes, Debug Nodes, and then the BB Dev Hub Print Debug node. So if we go back to here, we can also use keywords that allow us to quickly type up the node. So if I use a keyword phrase, or if I use debug, or if I use BB. Lastly, I added a color to my node, which is just blue. Beneath the graph list, I have my inputs and outputs. I had one execution input and one output execution. Then for my other two variables, I had the quick phrases from the enumeration blueprint I made and a duration float that allows me to specify for the amount of time the string remains on the screen. Alright, so let's actually create a node. So at the top left, we can click Add New, click on Macro, and we can name it, let's call it Transform Debug. For the node I created, it will allow us to show off the scale, the location, or the rotation of the character by using a few key clicks. First off, we'll add our three inputs, and they'll all be executions. We'll have the first one set to key 1, second one key 2, and the third one key 3. Then we'll add only one output execution, and we'll name that output. So for over here, we're going to drag off the output node, and we're going to type up get relative transform. Place this up here. Actually, for the relative transform, we'll need to connect a target into here. So if you go back into the inputs, add another input. We'll call this scene component. And then for the variable type, it's scene component. Reference. Okay. Now we can drag this off into the get relative transform. Now we can split the return value by right-clicking, split struct pen, drag this down here, move this over here. Now we'll add three print nodes. You can duplicate that by clicking Ctrl W. And one more time. I'm going to drag all this once again. Okay. Now we can hook up all of our key commands We can hook up all of our print string outputs into the output right here. Now we can connect the individual transforms into the strings. And after that, that's our node we've created. So what we can do now is go into our node and give it a description. I'll say this node allows the user to see the transform values of an object. Alright, so this node allows the user to see the transform values of an object. Values, okay. And so for the category, we can name it BB DevHub. And before we can actually search up the category, we first need to add in a couple of keywords. For the first keyword, I'll add transform. Then we have to use a comma. And then you can actually use a space, or you don't have to use a space, but then type in debug. Or I can also add in BB or DevHub. Now that we added in all those keywords, if we go into any blueprint and type it up, transform debug, it actually shows in the category. It's under BB DevHub. Or if you type in BB, it still shows up. Or if we type in transform, there it is, it shows up. So back in the standard macros, for the compact node title, we're going to leave that blank. But if you're curious, all it does is, if we type in transform debug, which is the name of our node, we go back in the character and type it up, it just shows up in the compact form. It still has all your variables and all of your nodes you created. It's just compacted. Now personally, I wouldn't use this because it only doesn't show an instance color, but it still works perfectly fine. Speaking of the instance color, we can add a color to our node, which I'll make red. Okay. And finally, we can leave off the call-in editor option. Now that we have all of this set up, we can go back into our character. We can type in our node we created, transform debug. Click enter, and it shows up the color, and shows up all of our inputs and outputs. So let's drag this off over here. We can drag in our mesh, hook that up to the scene component, and if we type in 1, we can connect that to here, to key 1, and I'll do the rest for the other numbers. Now after that's hooked up, we can click compile and play. So now, in our game, we can check the character's location, rotation, and scale by clicking these keys. 1 shows us our location, 2 shows us our rotation, and 3 shows us our scale. Thanks so much for watching my video, and if you enjoyed it, perhaps leave a like and a subscribe. Have a great day.